Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley speaking to you from Washington, D.C. And we have three large complexes to begin with here. It's Friday, the 3rd of October, and three big things. The first, including as we look towards the U.S. election, more details on John McCain, the terrorist's friend, cavorting with a caliph, with a kidnapper, and a cannibal. The big three, caliph, kidnapper, and cannibal in Idlib, Syria. This gives C cubed, or just about, a C or K, but call it C cubed. Not command, control, and communication, but a caliph, a kidnapper, and a cannibal. I suppose we can get by on fudging the spelling. It's like poetic license, okay? That's where he was. That's number one. We want to add in his little friends, guys like Congressman Lamborn of Colorado, who is urging mass desertions, mass insubordination, and mutiny in the U.S. Armed Forces at a time of war in Afghanistan, the threat of war always in the Middle East with ISIS and these killers, public health emergencies, and so forth. But the despicable anti-state anarchists, these Republicans, I guess we can call them. That's a curse word in its own right. Lamborn and company, and he says some of us are attempting to foment the collapse of the U.S. Armed Forces. On the whole, not a good thing, right? Would help lawless elements. I guess that's who they represent these days. And William Crystal going on one of the Sunday blabs, I think it was Face the Nation, whichever one it was, last Sunday, giving the phone number of the Weekly Standard and inviting disgruntled intelligence community types to call in. Oh, my God. Are we back to Valerie Plame? Are we back to massive leaking? You can see Crystal doesn't give a damn. He was a hypocrite, right? Saying, oh, Snowden's the end of the world. And then he turns around and says, oh, now we've got to have leaks to discredit Obama. This is all about as fake as Bell Hodges' charm offensive, his friendship tour around the world. Remember Bell Hodge? We were on his case already in the spring of 2011. He's going around. Maybe he'll meet McCain. I can't imagine that he wouldn't, and I'm quite serious. And then we've got the Secret Service question, and I hope we'll have time today to go through a kind of a summary, which I think represents the current state of our knowledge about what's been going on with the Secret Service, in particular from 2008, 2009 to the present time, but just some other notes to fill that in. So let's start with McCain. Now, as people know, that we're dealing essentially with two kinds of photographs, right? There's a photograph of McCain in Idlib, Syria, April 2013, where he's sitting down with a group of people. And the one guy in the room that anybody who's been looking at these things can recognize is General Salim Idris, who was the head of the Free Syrian Army until he fled to Doha, and his number two fled to Stockholm as the Free Syrian Army essentially ceased to exist back in in about December of last year, right, when their weapons warehouses were taken over by the Nusra, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, whatever it is. And then we have the outdoor pictures, right, where they're coming out of the meeting, apparently standing in front of a doorway, and you see McCain sort of mugging for the camera with a group of these people. Now, I had spent some time trying to figure out who these people actually were. And the first problem that you face with these people is not quite as bad as a British. The British always have, if you're a British oligarch, you have three names. But in this case, they have two. They have their normal name, and then they have their nom de guerre. So this is where we have to begin looking. Now, let's just bring ourselves up to date. In the indoor picture, you see Kane with General Idris, and you also Caliph. You see this guy, Ibrahim Badri, alias Baghdadi, Al-Qaeda, $10 million reward or something up to $10 million reward. And then, of course, the head of ISIS at the time, and now Caliph Ibrahim, the head of the caliphate with his Rolex watch. So you also see some other guys, right? Now, some of these, we're working on trying to identify those people. Now, in the outside picture, we see McCain in the center. On the right-hand side, we see a guy called Muaz Mustafa, who is something approaching a lobbyist, I would think. He's in the right foreground. But you've also got Mohammed Noor and the Caliph, right? So Mohammed Noor is out there in front. And this is, I think, this is going to be interesting. But the guy that is most interesting at this point, and I would send you to a very interesting website here. This is now called Countercurrent News. Countercurrent News, September 30th. John McCain accidentally admits he met with ISIS members. Well, that's not the news. That's the old Fox News. But what we're being told now is what I had been working on earlier in the week. In the pictures that were taken of McCain with these people, to the far left of the promo picture, then distributed by ISIS-linked rebels, by these crazies, we see a guy called Khalid al-Hamad. So it's Khalid-Hamad. Now, sometimes you're going to see Hamad, Hamad, sometimes Hamid. There are other variations. I've told you before, transliteration of Arabic into the Roman alphabet, any language, very tough to handle, right? But this guy standing at the extreme left with McCain out in front. It's actually funny. This is the cannibal. The cannibal. This is the guy, as the head of one of these brigades, supposedly of moderate terrorists. He's the guy who killed a Syrian soldier, cut him open, ripped out heart and a piece of lung, and bit into that and chowed down for the cameras. The cannibal. Yes, indeed. McCain met with the cannibal. Now, the problem with identifying this, as I experienced it, is this guy has two names. He's Khalid al-Hamad, Hamad, Hamid, and he's also Abu Sakkar, Abusakkar. And you'll see variations on that, too. You got to expect the vowels are going to kind of vary, okay? So you got to use other spelling variations. Getting into this, you see the problem of keeping a database of these terrorists because of the spelling, right? How are you going to do it? But anyway, there he is. Now, this is funny. McCain is in the center of a group of 5 people in one photograph. All the way on the left, the cannibal. And once again, Abu Sakkar, Khalid al-Hamad. Between McCain and the cannibal is the Caliph. That's Badri, Baghdadi, Caliph Ibrahim. Oh my God, and there's more. We'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. It's the 3rd of October. Now let me call your attention to some recent broadcast activity. Naturally, you want to check in at Tarpley.net, Tarpley.net. You would find there my Rents interview this week. Jeff Rents and I talking about this question of the Secret Service. I was beginning to assemble this catalog of incidents that I hope to go through with you today. And the other thing you'll find there is what I'm going to do tomorrow. That is tomorrow from the point of view of this program. On the 5th of October, Sunday, the 5th of October, 4 p.m. Eastern, I'll be on KDKA Pittsburgh with my friend Chris Moore. This, of course, the oldest broadcast station in the U.S., a boomer, goes all over the Middle West, 50,000 watts. So that will be highly interesting, and a lot of it will revolve, I'm sure, around these topics. So please do tune into that. Look at Tarpley.net. There are rumblings that the insistent rumblings that Romney is preparing to run again. Get a hold of that book, Just Too Weird, Bishop Romney and the Mormon Takeover of the United States with Polygamy, Theocracy, and Subversion. But now back to our dear friend McCain. So we've established that in that wonderful afternoon of Idlib, Syria, April of 2013, we have McCain sitting down with the cannibal, and once again, we want to make sure that we don't forget the cannibal, Khalid al-Hamad, alias Abu Sakar. You can find all kinds of interviews with these people. You'll even find correspondents saying he really doesn't seem that extreme at all. He's not extreme. He's just a cannibal. And of course, what arises here. Did McCain go to lunch with the cannibal? Did the cannibal say, why don't you come over for lunch? We're having, don't let me go into this line. But what we do find, of course, is that this guy is on tape. He cuts out and eats the heart and some lung of a Shiite victim of ISIS, according to one account. There's some debate about exactly who he had killed, but people have seen it. So that guy is a cannibal, whether he calls himself Free Syrian Army, Storm Brigade, Nusra, Islamic Front, ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, whatever he calls himself. He's a cannibal, and that's really all we need to know. So now we have a U.S. senator cavorting with a cannibal and a caliph, because, of course, the cannibal, kills a few, right, according to his needs for food, I guess. But the caliph, of course, Bakri Baghdadi, Caliph Ibrahim. Between McCain and the cannibal, we have the caliph, and then we have another guy standing in the door. He's just a kidnapper. There were two people at this meeting, according to our research, two people who were involved in kidnapping 10 Shiite religious pilgrims that they accused of being from the Revolutionary Guard of Iran. And when it became clear that McCain had met with those people, he was threatened with lawsuits. He was threatened with lawsuits from relatives of the people who had been kidnapped, and he was consorting with the kidnappers. So he had distanced himself from that pronto. One of the things they'll tell you, of course, on this is it's all covered by the speech and debate clause. It is not. The speech and debate clause does not make you above the law. Sorry, John McCain. And the other question is for little Rand Paul. If he's still on this issue, right? He was on this issue 2 weeks ago, but with him, of course, we can't tell. So here's what I recommend. You're going to sit down in the Republican caucus with a cannibal, with a caliph and a kidnapper, the friend of all those. Is that what you're going to do? There are two remedies that any senator can put in, right? You don't need the Department of Justice. You'll remember that Senator Joe McCarthy, the red-baiting bigot, when he overdid it and started attacking the U.S. Army, he was censured. The Senate voted to censure him. It basically says the Senate gets together and condemns the behavior of one of its own members. Good. Do that for McCain. And since, of course, this is much more serious, right, because this is now not just destroying careers and lives, it's killing people with the caliph and the cannibal and indeed the kidnapper, because who knows the relation of the kidnapper to these Foley and so, right? We have these reports that the Free Syrian Army, so-called, sold the two beheading victims, we assume, to the ISIS killers, right? So you have all that. So this is much worse. So McCain should not just be censured; he should be censured first and then expelled. The Senate can expel a member. Yes, indeed, the Senate can expel a member. I remember a friend of mine, Harrison Williams, senator from New Jersey, and he was Watergated because he represented the pro-labor wing of the Democratic Party. They went after him, and he was on the Senate floor. A roll call vote to expel him had begun, and he stopped it by resigning on the Senate floor. So they were going to expel Harrison Williams of New Jersey. This was back in the days of Abscam, Brylab, Pendorf, and all the rest of that. FBI sting operations to try to weaken and destroy the Labor Democratic Party connection. McCain is much worse. McCain needs to be expelled. Expel him. We're going to keep going with our hashtag arrest McCain for ISIS, because this evidence is now building up week by week. Cannibals, caliphs, kidnappers. No U.S. senator can be allowed to do this. And what are you going to do? Vote Republican under those circumstances? Oh, you're going to get one of his friends? How about your voters in Kansas? He's in there now. He has been this week. McCain had been put in the closet as far as Washington and the Sunday shows were concerned for about 2 weeks. He was out there campaigning for Senator Pat Roberts of Kansas. You're going to reward the Republicans for bringing a friend of the caliph and the cannibal and the kidnapper into your state of Kansas? I think even Kansas, this is too much. So yes, he was there, and yes, he did do all these things. Now, the other question now is we want to move on to. First of all, let's just quickly go through these people who are trying to attack the U.S. Armed Forces, right? This is Congressman Lamborn of Colorado, and he says, some of us are talking to military officers and telling them if you don't like Obama's policy in the Middle East, I think, but mainly Ukraine, too, is prominent. If you don't like what Obama is doing, and what they mean by that is if he's not bombing enough, if he's not sending in enough divisions, right? If he's not enough of a warmonger, then you should resign, says Lambert. Whoa, that's already a violation of federal law. Forget speech and debate. Back in a minute. Back to World Crisis Radio. It's the 3rd of October here in Washington. And once again, on the 5th of October, Sunday, KDKA, 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the afternoon with my good friend Chris Moore. So now, let's just a couple of other notes on this ISIS situation. We've just had Biden, and this is really hard to interpret. Biden opens his yap. Well, we know that Biden has a big yap and a mind like a rag bag. So Biden opens his yap on a trip to Cambridge, Massachusetts, I think. And he starts saying, look, our biggest problem in the Middle East are our allies. And he says, essentially, Turkey and the Saudis, Turkey and the Gulf states are funding these terrorists, and they should stop. So it means Turkey, clearly, Gulf Cooperation Council, mainly Saudi, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, the wonderful gratitude of Kuwait for being reinstalled in power. See how far that gets you. And then he says, moderate opposition. Why, says Joe, Lunch Bucket Joe says, there is no moderate opposition in Syria. There is no moderate opposition. And I think this is a very important point. There is a moderate opposition, and it's where you'd expect a moderate opposition to be, in the parliament, running for office, contesting elections. The moderate opposition is not an armed terrorist killer opposition. It's peaceful. I met some of these people when I was received by the governor of Homs in November of 2011. I met with he had a bunch of people there. He had all of the religious leaders, Christians included, but he had some one or two westernized women who could have been at home in Paris as well as in Homs. And another guy, very interesting, a Marxist. He was actually a Marxist poet. And the Marxist poet said, Assad is too soft. He should crack down more. And the fashionable women were saying, we just want to be able to organize politically, have our own political party, and so forth. That's the moderate opposition. And they've been essentially back with Assad from about April or May or whatever it was of 2011. The people who are armed are all terrorists. The armed opposition is ipso facto the terrorist opposition. Let's get that all clear. So Biden is right. And of course, I guess based on this, we'll have to stop the plan to spend $500 million on the moderate terrorist opposition. And of course, even without that, there's going to be a grave difficulty in finding moderate terrorist opposition figures who can be actually vetted moderates. They have to be. That's going to be very hard. It's going to be very hard to find. So the other question, the people that McCain is right? McCain knows his terrorists. McCain had said to Kerry 10 days ago, John, I know too many of them, terrorists, right? Free Syrian Army, Nusra, ISIS. I know too many of them, said McCain. They'll never do what you want. They'll never stop fighting Assad to focus on ISIS. And indeed, that turns out to be an understatement. The various so-called moderate terrorist opposition groups in Syria are turning against the U.S. They say, this is no good. We don't want to bomb ISIS. They say, we have no quarrel with ISIS and the caliph. We don't care about that. Beheadings, we don't care. What we want to do is fight Assad. Obviously, they want the spoils, don't they? So the people that the U.S. proposes to arm are saying they're not going to turn these weapons against ISIS. They're gonna focus on Assad. So there is no moderate middle in Syria. It's gone since about February, March of 2011, since McCain and the International Republican Institute. This is very important. One of the two wings of Project Democracy, in other words, the National Endowment of Democracy, which organizes coups and destabilizations and putsches around the world under democratic camouflage. One of the two wings is the International Republican Institute, chairman of the board, John McCain. Okay? So that's a whole mechanism for destabilization. And you'll remember that some of the destabilizers, the meddlers of the U.S. who were arrested in Egypt, one of them was this kid LaHood, son of the Republican congressman and later Obama cabinet official Ray LaHood. So the young LaHood had gone back to the Republican gravy train, and he was building his resume by destabilizing Egypt. That's the International Republican Institute, right? They organize coups. There's a Democratic Party version. I think that's the one that the former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright was a part of. Now, Turkey. The Turkish parliament now says, okay to intervene. You're allowed to intervene, Erdogan. But this does not mean that Erdogan will intervene, or Erdogan may intervene in such a way as to attack Assad, to provide a safe haven for terrorists. Right? There is now this fight going on at the city of Kobane. It's in Syria. It's right near the Turkish border, a mile away. it would be very easy for the Turkish government to close the border. That's the big demand. Close your blankety blank border to those terrorists, and their logistics will be cut off. Array your army massively on your own side of the border. No, this is a competing plan for a caliphate, right? If you say new Ottoman Empire, my God, the Ottoman emperor, up until about, 1920, was the caliph. So Erdogan says, what? Caliph Ibrahim? You must be crazy. Everybody knows that Erdogan is the new name for the caliph. Well, sorry. People in Turkey need to think now. If they expect the United States to come and help them in case of aggression, and they can't even close their border, I think even in the arid and imbecilic lands of mainstream media, this is going to be too much, and we've even seen that in the Congress. And we're also, how about this? According to Press TV, ISIS, the Islamic State, has representatives of Caliph Ibrahim, McCain's friend. They have now opened a consulate in Ankara, Turkey, and if you want to get a visa to go to the ISIS-controlled parts of Syria and or Iraq, you can go to the consulate there and get that visa, I'm sure, for a very hefty fee. Now, how does this – let's see. That's what your friends are doing to you. Now, your so-called enemies, right? Let's take Syria. Moallem, always a monument of dignity, the Syrian foreign minister at the UN, laying out the position, dignified, calm. And later in the press interviews, he said he urges the United States and other countries to bomb all the terrorists in Syria. He's happy to see the U.S. bombing them. And he says, why don't you give up on your dualism by virtue of which you are willing to bomb some terrorists and help some others, or maybe even bomb at one time and help at another time the same terrorists. That's going to be. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. This is indeed Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. on the 3rd of October. Now, concerning this Lamborn sedition, the Lamborn sedition has been repudiated by Lamborn. As soon as that stuff got out on the Internet and he began to feel the proverbial blowtorch of public opinion, he said, oh, no, I didn't mean that at all. Yeah, that's sedition, Congressman. You better back off from that. And how about those other guys, the sum of us that you talked about? Does that mean that you're stopping with sedition and they're continuing? And then Crystal, once again, gives out the phone number. Call me at the Weekly Standard, and we'll make you into the new Snowden. But wait a minute, Crystal, aren't you supposed to be against the Snowden caper, the limited hangout? Now, let's try to do as much as we can here on the Secret Service. Now, remember, a lot of these stupid broadcasts assume there was a time when the Secret Service had a great reputation. That's not in my lifetime. Franklin D. Roosevelt assassination. The Russian woman painter and her assistant were in the room. They were allowed to flee the scene. No checks, no investigation, no chemical analysis of her paint box, and they fled with Lucy Rutherford, the mistress of Roosevelt. You wouldn't know about the details, though, if you'd listened to Ken Burns. JFK assassination, nobody can forget that famous film where the 4 Secret Service men are on the 4 corners of the car. Supervisor tells them to get down. They protest. One guy gesticulates. He's so angry. And within minutes, Kennedy has been shot. Was that supervisor ever put on trial? RFK assassination. He had Secret Service protection by that point. George Wallace, another one. With Ford, the most interesting ones are the ones where you can see what the goal is. Nelson Rockefeller, CIA pillar, CIIA, right? Inter-American Affairs, Latin American subversion. All right, so he's going to be the beneficiary. So with poor Gerald Ford, we get not one but 2. Sarah Jane Moore, Lynette Squeaky Fromm to get Nelson Rockefeller into the presidency. Could anything be more obvious? And in the case of Ronald Reagan, poor guy, he chose George Bush the elder, so therefore he gets Hinckley, who was on the watch lists, and so forth. Now, basic ideas. The oligarchy wants to promote chaos because that's a great medium. Then within that, they can run specific actions. Somebody like Obama comes in eager to serve the banks and the oligarchy. The presidency and the dynamics of the nation state kind of take over and blunt some of these things, so that Obama today is not what he was. And, of course, in the meantime, CIA puppet model 2008 has now been outdistanced in evil by 09, 10, 11, 12, 13, 12 was Romney, of course, and others. Okay? I once saw an interesting cartoon. It was a gorilla. This was Chile, but it could have been something else. The gorilla with a machine gun. It said CIA puppet model 1974, and a saw blade was reaching up through the floor to cut a circle around him, and that one said CIA 1976. So you get the idea. First term, oligarchy controls president by need of money to run for office. Second term by scandals. But then within that, it's punctuated by this constant sniping, quite literally. Couple of examples. November 2009, the Salahis crash the reception. Couple of weeks after that, Obama's West Point speech, first week of December. He gives them the Afghan surge, but he also has a date for a pullout. So they're happy about the surge, but they don't like the pullout. December 2009, Mutalab in the skies over Detroit. And you'll remember, let's see if we can find it. Look at this is all on tarpley.net in quite a bit of detail. You'll remember that on the evening of January 4th, right, about 2 weeks later, along comes Richard Wolff on MSNBC, and the word is that the Obama White House became very suspicious that this had been deliberate, that Mutalab was allowed on there deliberately in order to embarrass Obama. 2010, I'm not finding a whole lot, but we're going to try to fill that in. 2011, the Arab Spring kicked off by Walnuts McCain in Cairo. March 2011, Obama okays the Libya bombing. Okay. Parenthetically, if Gaddafi had attacked Benghazi and killed the rebels in Benghazi, there would have been no Syrian civil war, no ISIS, no destabilization of Iraq. Would have been smarter to let Gaddafi go in there and mop up those crazies. In the middle of the year, 2011, Operation Moonlight, then head of it, Mark Sullivan, Secret Service director, wanted to secure his personal assistant, Lisa Chopek, from constant harassment, he said, from her next-door neighbor in La Plata, Maryland. So from July through August 2011, 2 members of the Prowler team were detached every day, twice every day, to go down and essentially not protect the president, but to protect Lisa Chopek. On October 21st, Obama gave a press conference announcing total pullout from Iraq. November 11th, we get the 7 shots that have now been reported by the Washington Post. 7 shots into the southern facade by a shooter. The supervisor from the Secret Service says no shots were fired. That guy has to be fired. He's got to be identified and purged immediately. He's a rotten apple. Pull on that, you get the rogue network. You'll get the deep state. Then the other issue at the time, the jihadi airlift from Libya to Turkey. In other words, get the crazies that had killed Gaddafi, get them into Turkey and then into Syria to attack Assad. Maybe it was Obama dragging his feet. Anyway, that's the roots of Benghazi are in that. 2012, April, Cartagena orgy. 12 Secret Service people sent back after a quarrel about paying the prostitutes. It was after this that Pearson was brought in. Pearson is now out. In April of 2013, the Wall Street Journal reports Kerry, Samantha Power bring in Petraeus and Keane to try to gin up the war in Syria. That's the background. In October of 2013, this is a horrendous crime. Miriam Carey, a deranged woman, black woman with her daughter in the car, massacred, mowed down, 27 shots, 5 wounds, dead. The daughter not wounded by some miracle. And this does not figure in the latest Washington Post summary because they don't seem to think that was a security threat. That was a huge event. November 24th, 2013, Ignacio Zamora, the Secret Service agent brought in to probe the Cartagena, is shacked up overnight in the Hay Adams. And his story is he wanted to get back in to get one of his bullets that he left behind. I don't know if we can believe any of this. He's also involved in sending pornographic emails. Okay. A couple of weeks after that, 13th of December, Obama in South Africa, we get the sign language scandal, right? That the guy apparently doing the sign language was an imposter, mentally disturbed, and so forth. Now we're into 2014. February, we have the Ukrainian coup. Was Obama consulted, or who knows, right? Obama is somebody who does not get told after there's been an assassination attempt against him or a possible assassination attempt, because some of these could be that. So imagine, you think Obama's controlling the government? He can't even control his security detail. 26th of March, 2014, Secret Service agent drunk passed out in the hallway of a hotel in Amsterdam. 3 agents sent home. Next day, 27th of March, 2 counter snipers were drunk driving, got into a crash in Florida. June 2014, this is very significant. Obama is in Poland on a support visit. He's in the gymnasium of a hotel. He is filmed. The device that filmed Obama could have been an explosive device. That could have been the vehicle of an assassination right there. Maybe those Ukrainian fascists know something about that. Going to have to speed it up now. Then in May of 2014, we have a second West Point speech. And we'll try to pick this up, just wrap it up in the beginning of the next segment. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome to the second hour of World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. It's the 3rd of October as we tape the broadcast. I know I promised to complete the catalog of Secret Service malfeasance, but of course there were so many items that I ran out of time. I'm gonna turn back to that before the end of the show, probably in the 8th and final segment for those of you who want to stitch those together and use them for something. But in the meantime, we try to keep track of social conditions in the U.S. at the grassroots level, and we try to find places that look to us like microcosms of what's going on elsewhere in the country. And one of the ones we are most interested in is the Benton Harbor, Michigan, and the Michigan case in general, right, under Governor Rick Snyder, fascist governor, and his emergency management law. So we would like to go now to Benton Harbor, Michigan, and talk to Reverend Edward Pinkney, who is the head of Benton Harbor Banco, one of the main organizations that's fighting for the rights of people, their economic and political rights. So welcome, Reverend, and give us the update, please.
Webster, I am happy to be on your show, and I tell you, we've been out here rocking and rolling. They have tried to put me in jail not once but twice. Once they told me if I went to the Barron County meeting on Thursday that they would arrest me. They had about 10 deputy sheriffs waiting on me. And it was something you would never believe. We was talking
how can that be legal? Isn't there a First Amendment? I must have missed something.
It is illegal, but I couldn't take a chance because I'm on trial. But what I did, I sent 4 or 5 people in there to speak about all the tanks in our community. Matter of fact, we have more tanks in our community probably than Chicago have in their community. And we want to know why. So they knew that we was coming to speak, and they was outside waiting. I didn't show up there, but I was driving around the neighborhood to make sure everything went okay with my group. We also discovered that the administrator was doing inside trading. He's a multi-millionaire right now. when they built the Jack Nicklaus Signature Golf Course, he was the one who went over there buying them houses for $1. And he bought up everything.
And this is that prime lakefront property that looks out over Lake Michigan, very desirable. So this guy he's been appointed to this job, and he's using it to line his own pockets.
Absolutely, and he is a multi-millionaire now. I mean, I don't not just a plain millionaire. He's multi. Him and his whole family, all of them are millionaires because of what they have done to the city of Benton Harbor, and it's almost ridiculous. And here's something even bigger: they have started to cut the people water off again. Unfortunately, I don't have my tool to cut it back on. So I don't know how we're going to work this thing to get it back on. But I'm thinking of ways of getting this thing back on. But unfortunate for us, we do not have that tool anymore. So we're out here, Webster, doing the things that need to be done. And it's not just here in Benton Harbor now. It's going all over this country. Detroit. They even talk about the water in Detroit now. They start cutting their water off now. So the whole state of Michigan is in jeopardy right now, unless we do something about it, Webster.
But let me just say, I think there may be people listening to this broadcast who might have such a tool, or they can buy one, they can get one, they have ways and means. And when you give your address, I would hope that some people can. If you don't have a lot of money lying around, maybe you have one of these tools that can be used to restore water service. Obviously, this is, in the age of Ebola, we're cutting people's water off. This is unbelievable. So we need to restore the water. Maybe somebody can send in the tool.
Oh, absolutely. I'm hoping that someone can send me one. If they can send me, if I can get 2 or 3, I can take one up to Detroit because they took theirs too. Well, that was mine, the one they took. So what we want to do, we want to make sure people understand how important it is to have water. They should not be cutting off people water. Water is free. Three-quarters of the world is water. But I tell you one thing, though, we are really doing the things that need to be done. Listen, I'm only 3 weeks away from my trial. 3 weeks away. And I still need money for this handwriting expert. We're that close. We're planning on dealing with him on the Monday coming, not this Monday, the next Monday. And if we have the money, we're going to go meet him, and he says it's going to take him 7 days to analyze my handwriting, and he'll be able to come just in time for the trial. But we must have that money. So I'm still looking for maybe, if I can get 5 people to send me $250, I'll be more than happy. Just 5 people now. That's all we need. If we could do that, I'll be more than happy. And we're doing this thing because we're not giving up this fight, Webster. We're going to do the things that need to be done to make sure that we can win this battle.
Reverend, give us the contact information, mail, phone, internet, PayPal.
Mm-hmm. You can go to bhbanco.org, and there's a PayPal there. That's bhbanco, BANCO.org. There's a PayPal right there. That's BHBANCO.org, or you can mail a check to Banco at 1940 Union Avenue, Benton Harbor, Michigan, 49022. That's Banco. You make the check out to Banco, send it to 1940 Union Avenue, Benton Harbor, Michigan, 49022. And the battle is continuing, Webster. We're not giving up. We're not quitting. We're letting them know that we're standing tall. And it's not just here. It starts here in Michigan, but it's going to spread all over the country, even all over the world, if we don't stop them now.
It's certainly true. In the 1930s, the idea of a sit-down strike was unheard of until it started in the Detroit, Michigan area, and then it was in France within a couple of months and around the world. So that could happen in our time.
Absolutely, and they're preparing for me now. They brought in another witness. I don't know where they came from with this witness, but they supposed to have another witness. But I tell them all we need is a handwriting expert. If we get a handwriting expert, to let them know that it's impossible for me to have changed that. The deal is done, which we know already that I didn't do it. They know I didn't do it. That's why they didn't bring in a handwriting expert. They brought in a forensics to say that somebody changed it, but not a handwriting. Well, he could do the same thing, but unfortunately, he didn't do it because we know why he didn't do it, because they would have to turn that evidence over to us, and we had to deal with that. So we're fighting, and we're going to continue to fight. We're going to win this battle, and then I'm going to move around the country to help other people around the country fight their battles. That's what I'm going to do.
Great idea. And of course, this water issue, right? We have international listeners. The question of resuming the water cutoffs in Detroit and elsewhere in Michigan was an international scandal story this past week. In other words, that had been stopped for a while, but now they're going to go back to it. And the argument was, water is not free. Yeah, water has to be a public utility, and it has to be free if that's the only way people are going to get water. Otherwise, you're lowering the defenses of everybody, right? The entire community is threatened if some people don't have water.
Absolutely. Because here, when you don't have water in your home, they condemn your home. And if you have children, they call DHS and they come and take your children. So we're dealing with something here. So
it's a creeping totalitarianism by the banks.
Absolutely.
With the permission of the courts. What a scandal. Well, keep fighting, Reverend. We know you will, and we hope you come back next week. And I hope in the meantime, find some of those tools. Throw a monkey wrench into Wall Street's plans.
Hey, we'll do something.
We'll see you next week. And we'll be back. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, October 3rd, 2014, here in Washington, D.C. And right now, of course, it's about less than 5 weeks to the general election. And that's going to be the 4th of November, so fewer than 35 days. Let's now go without further ado to Lincoln, Nebraska, and check in with the Tax Wall Street Party candidate for United States Senate from the state of Nebraska, Dan Burdorf, and get an update on what's going on there, the fight to expose Ben Sass and the Democratic rival Domina and other issues that are percolating up from the base. Welcome,
Hello.
Dan.
Hello, Webster. Thanks very much for having me on your show.
Always a pleasure. Every week.
Wonderful. Well, we had some accomplishments this week. We campaigned at the Harvest, the Hope Keystone XL pipeline demonstration in concert, and you can see pictures of that at Twitter at Dan for Nebraska. And we got a lot of new supporters to our program. So I went there with our program using the old intervention model, and we talked about the Wall Street sales tax. We talked about mobilizing the Federal Reserve for public credit for production. And what we're going to do with that is use that not only to rebuild the infrastructure, but to invest in a 21st century power system, which will include research into fusion energy, not only solar, wind, and other older technologies that some other candidates are talking about. So people responded to that, and they also responded to our idea of preserving and strengthening the social safety net, and that would include SNAP, food stamps, aid to dependent children, veterans care, and care and support for the mentally ill. That'll all be fully funded by a Wall Street sales tax. So we got a lot of new supporters to our program at that Hope for the Harvest Keystone XL pipeline celebration. Also this week, we met the very impressive Betty Brash at the Center for People in Need in Lancaster County. And you can find them at CFPIN on Twitter, or search Center for People in Need. I'm happy to plug their program there. We talked about the issues of poverty last week on your show, Webster, and of course,
right.
Those issues aren't going away, and that includes the fact that only 6% of the assistance to needy families comes from private charities. So although Center for People in Need is doing a tremendous job in Lancaster County, we also have to strengthen and support that social safety net that is so important, and that's a key policy in our program with the Tax Wall Street Party. Webster, I also, if you don't mind, I'd also like to speak to the issue of legalization of marijuana. This is kind of a big issue in Nebraska that's coming up. The governor's debate just covered it last night, and my opponent, Dave Domina, came out for legalization of marijuana recently, saying that America hasn't been winning the drug war. And in response to this, Ben Sass, my Republican opponent, came out with a statement in which he makes no statement at all, saying that Nebraskans are considering the issues. And then in the meantime, Western Nebraska is facing a crime problem on our Colorado border. You know, Colorado just legalized marijuana, and there have been murders and increased crime in Western Nebraska. And this shows that we need a national solution to the drug war. And that's a position that Ben Sass is opposed to. So I suggest we look at the Maryland model, which is let's decriminalize marijuana, but not totally legalize it. We have to, because we see in the papers quite often that large Wall Street banks participate in money laundering, and large organized operations participate in trafficking and pushing drugs, and marijuana included. So we should go after these groups with the full force of the law. However, I believe possession and trading of small amounts for an adult should be decriminalized, just like a traffic violation, so there should be no jail time and no criminal record for people, no mass incarceration of black communities, and we don't want a prison industrial complex. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to get that out, because that's been an issue in Nebraska, and I think voters are interested in what the candidates are going to say to that, whether they're going to support a Soros plan of total legalization or just remain completely non-committal like my opponent Ben Sass does. So
I think that's brilliant. Look, if you're going to go from the fake war on drugs, which is what it is,
sure.
If you go all the way to legalization, that's a leap into the abyss. I would say that's too much.
Right.
It seems to me, as you put it, right, the Maryland model is it's not legal, but it's not criminal either. In other words, it's a misdemeanor. It's right. You can get a significant fine or a few weeks in jail if you insist, right? If you try to go near kids or other things, right, go into schools, then it becomes more serious. So decriminalization is not legalization, and the thing that's not addressed in the Maryland model is, as far as I know anyway, is the medical marijuana. It seems to me lots and lots of narcotic substances are already prescribable by doctors if it is found that there are benefits from any kind of controlled substance. Then under a strict supervision of a doctor, that could also be possible. But I think you're certainly right. To go from total ban to legalization, that's going to create social chaos. And we all know, right? Yeah. CIA runs drugs. Wall Street launders the money. There it is. Don't give up on that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up medical marijuana, too, because there's been a lot of research and there's a lot of possibilities for medical marijuana helping people, and that should be explored for sure. But we definitely need to, keep selling to minors to stay a crime. Selling to school children should be a crime. Large-scale trading should be a crime. And money laundering should stay a crime.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy to challenge my opponents on that. And we're still challenging Ben Sass on the McConnell pledge. You remember he made a pledge, Mitch McConnell made a pledge to David Koch of the Koch brothers, and this is from June this year. Koch brothers retreat from where McConnell promised Koch that with a majority in the House and Senate, the GOP could bring austerity cuts and attack or ignore the minimum wage and even attack student aid. And I'm asking Ben Sass if he will follow the McConnell if he's elected. And I think Ben Sass will promise killer cuts and an end to a better minimum wage or even the minimum wage itself. And I think that this man Sass, whose family is rumored to have bought him his position as president of a small Nebraska university, and now he wants to buy a U.S. Senate seat, this man Sass will even join the Republicans to cut student aid. So no student loan help from your...
no more Pell Grants.
Right. And this is from a university president. Well, I'm also challenging Mr. Sass to stand up to John McCain. The angle
I'm sorry, Dan, the music is already in the background.
Okay.
It's danfornebraska.com, danfornebraska.com.
Thanks very much
and
for
I
having
think
me,
this
Webster.
is an
really
excellent program. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week and every week, all through the election season. Back in a minute on back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Now, we have one more stop on our panorama of struggle this week, and now this is a contest for the United States House of Representatives in the 5th Congressional District of California, Napa, Sonoma, and nearby areas, St. Helena. And the candidate we're interested in here is James Hinton. And James, I understand that you've attracted the attention of the editorial board of your local paper there in St. Helena.
Right. We had an interview last Friday with the St. Helena editorial board, which consisted of 3 members from the St. Helena staff, along with 5 members of the community, making up a board of 8 people. So Mike Thompson was there, and he went first at 3 o'clock, and I went in at 4 o'clock for my interview. So we seen Thompson afterwards, and he was asked if he would come to a forum from the League of Women Voters if he was invited, and he said probably not. And that has been empirically
Let me just stop and ask you, he's asked by the editorial board of the principal newspaper in the district, would you engage in a debate with your opponent? And he says probably not.
No. This happened between one of my friends, cornered him in the hallway after his interview. You know, he shook his hand as, you know, a supporter of his or whatnot. And then he said, "Hey, Mike, do you know who James Hinton is?" And he said, "No." He said, "Well, he got over 10% of the vote in the primary, and if the League of Women Voters were to host a forum, would you be willing to attend it?" And he said, "Probably not."
Probably
and
not.
That has been, like I said, that has been empirically verified now, because thanks to your support from your show, all right, all the emails and phone calls and Twitter, the League of Women Voters actually did reach out to Mike Thompson and extend an invitation to him to come on out on October 8th or any time to have a forum with me before the election. And he said no. Okay, so
this is now
March, officially
flat out no.
This is officially no. He has officially declined their invitation for a forum from the League of Women Voters.
And they call this is called the Democratic Party. Democratic.
Right. Mike Thompson is a Wall Street Democrat, yes. And he's, refusing to face me. So evidently the St. Helena Star, they like their hometown boy with Mike Thompson, and they didn't like the fact that I referred to Ukraine Poroshenko as a Nazi. So they didn't like that too well, and they mentioned that in the newspaper. But I find it interesting. Now you can look at NBC
James,
News.
before you go any further, I'm sorry, I got to stop you on this one too. I got to stop you. I would say that deserves many a Twitter, maybe a poster. As far as I can see, you're the only candidate running for the U.S. House of Representatives on any ballot in any district, right? And there were 435. The only one with the guts to call things by their real name. This character, Poroshenko, is a Nazi. He's sitting on top of the Azov battalion. He's sitting on top of these other groups that have swastikas, SS runes, Wolf Angle. It's the world of Himmler, right? That's their world. And they are offended. What was their rationale, right? That there are no Nazis in Ukraine?
You know what? I think it was their lack of knowledge on the issues, right? I think they're probably looking down a really narrow tunnel vision at a foreign policy, and they're not looking for the right information. But it's, the old saying, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Well, if you look like a Nazi with swastikas on your helmet, and you act like a Nazi, all right, with their fascist regime, you're probably a Nazi, and I think that's fair to say, So why
It certainly is. And remember, this is not, on the one hand, you have people in his army, right? His army is shot through with Nazis. And the other thing is the austerity that he represents, right, is a throwback to the Nazi regime. In other words, when you tell people, we're going to take down your social safety net, we're going to fire teachers, we're going to, lay waste to the social gains of many decades, that's what Hitler did too.
Right. And, you see there's some other policies with his police and everything else within the Ukraine that's not exactly, the kind of behavior you want to support necessarily,
Absolutely not.
But
I say that's a plus, right? I think people should look at you as a fighter.
Oh, I am a fighter, and that's what I'll do if I'm elected, is I'll make sure that we look at the whole truth when we make these decisions. If we don't want to overlook a fact that that you've got a Nazi regime somewhere, just because they didn't tell you that on Fox News. We want to look at we want to look at everything when we make our decisions.
Now, James, we're running out of time. You got to tell us, do you have any events coming up where people can show up to make their voices heard? Anything like this?
Right. I'm going to be. This weekend, we have the Vallejo Waterfront Weekend. So all day, Saturday and Sunday, there's going to be, it's a free 2-day event featuring music, food, and entertainment. All-day activities starting every day at 9 out at the Vallejo Waterfront. I will be down there as much as I can, meeting as many people in the district, sharing my ideas, and looking for votes and support. So if you want to come on out to Vallejo this weekend, you catch me out there in the daytime on Saturday and Sunday.
Great. And don't we have one other forum or other event where you might...
There's a couple this week. So Wednesday night at the Napa Community College, there's another forum out there. And we're trying to get, hopefully, me and Mike Thompson, if they're ready for us, Mike. Mr. Thompson, are you out there? Are you listening? Would you come and put your ideas up against mine, and let's let the voters of our district decide what kind of direction and leadership they want, okay? Let's see if they like Obamacare or Medicare. Let's get sized up, make sure they know where you're at and where I'm at, and let's do this. But I'll be out there regardless, and then the next night, on Thursday night, I'll be out in Sonoma. There'll be a city council candidates forum going on in Sonoma. You can find me out there. Everybody should visit my website, hintonforcongress.com. Stay up to date. We need some more support.
Let me just point out one other thing, James, because I know you're too much of a gentleman to get into this, but if Thompson doesn't show up for these things, there is this terrible rumor that is coursing around the Northern Bay area, there where you are, that he can't control his drinking, that he has a drinking problem, and that sometimes he's just in his cups. And the story was on the weekend of the earthquake, right, which struck in the night between Saturday and Sunday, that he was like Harry Truman in April of 1945, right, that he was soused, that he was out of it. So people have to ask themselves something about that too, right? Because I know you have you've had some medical issues, but you've been waging a doughty and energetic campaign. And here's this Thompson who doesn't seem to be willing to to fall out of bed in the morning and or even afternoon and come
I just wonder how he is in general, because you don't ever see.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave that hanging though, because there's the automatic mechanisms. So it's Hinton for Congress on the internet. We'll see you again next week, James. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. We have to cut the nice music short. Remember Tarpley on KDKA Pittsburgh, Sunday the 5th of October, 4 p.m. Chris Moore, fine journalist and always interesting. And, of course, that's Pittsburgh, so that's indispensable. So let's just get back to our question here on the Secret Service, right? What we've tried to uncover, this Operation Moonlight where 2 agents from the Prowler unit were detached to guard the home of the Secret Service Director Mark Sullivan's assistant, Lisa Chope. That all happened in the summer of 2011. It didn't become known until a couple of years after that. I would also notice that the Republican approach to these scandals is to stress them, to blow them up, right? What they're trying to do is build this thing saying, look at the chaos under Obama, look at the chaos. This reminds me of previous scandals where a president like Clinton, right? Vince Foster, his friend, is killed, and the right-wing reactionaries turn around and say, oh, Clinton killed one of his guys because he was going to talk. Well, in this case, the rogue network, secret government, deep state, sends these operatives or dupes, usually patsies, psychos, to make points vis-a-vis Obama, and then their parliamentary wing of the same faction, because that's what it is, the Republicans, they turn around and say, oh, look at this chaos. Remember, this is a president, unfortunately, who is not even told about assassination attempts after they have happened. And that is very serious. It shows you getting elected to the presidency means nothing. You got to fight to have those powers. And this president hasn't been able to fight. But still, I don't care about that. They don't get to send in these rogue network threats as a means of getting war. We don't want the war, and we want to fight back against the threats. Now, what we were getting to now was 2014, once again, in February, the Ukrainian coup. 26th of March, agent passed out in the hallway in Amsterdam, 3 sent back. 27th of March, 2 counter snipers, drunk driving crash in Florida. June 2014, Obama in the gymnasium in Poland gets taped. What else could have been in that camera? Let your imagination run wild. And then we have the second West Point speech. Remember, the first one was December 2009, which said, okay, surge in Afghanistan, but pull-out date specified. No, they didn't like the second part. And then in this case, it's the second West Point speech where they all went bonkers. Charles Krauthammer foaming at the mouth. This is pointless. This is useless. We want to hear about war. We want war in Ukraine, war with Syria, war. And the American people, sorry, neocons, right? And you neocons, how is it that they're allowed on television? I don't know. One of the things we can say is that the political culture of the United States is imbecilic because of the refusal also to treat these incidents as what they are. They are threats in the service of a policy, which is war and escalation. Okay, so now, September the 16th, 2014, we're now getting right up to our own time now. In Atlanta, Obama gets on an elevator, and with him is an armed contractor of the Centers for Disease Control, packing heat. He's got a handgun. 3 criminal convictions. He's in the elevator with Obama. He films Obama. Man, the idea we can watch you wherever you are. Then he gets into an altercation with the Secret Service, who should have never let him on the elevator. He is fired, and then it turns out he's got the handgun. So then we have on September 20th, not 1 but 2, we have the fence jumper who gets into the East Room and the Green Room, right? And no snipers, no dogs, no nothing. And the car on Pennsylvania Avenue. And since the carrying capacity of the car in terms of explosives is greater, the car is a greater threat, not lesser. And today we get another one. September 27th at the D.C. Convention Center, just a short time ago, an imposter claiming to be Congressman Donald Payne, Democrat of New Jersey, gets into a reserved security cordoned backstage area at the Washington, D.C. Convention Center. He accesses the area where Obama's going to be and could have gotten much closer to the president. So Pearson out good. But, for example, go back and find the supervisor. November 11th, 2011. 11/11/11. This is Freemasonic, people. This is what I've been telling you about World War I. If you've been listening to what I've been saying about World War I, Bonnie Faulkner, Guns and Butter is posted this past week. Go and listen to it. Freemasonic networks, okay? 11/11/11, Freemasonic, posted by the Washington Post at 11/11, Freemasonic. 7 shots into the southern facade of the White House, and the supervisor gets on the phone and says, no shots were fired. Fire that guy. Out on your ear, right? Canned. Fired. And similar others, right? And there were some people on MSNBC posturing about this, and that's fine. I'd let them, but make it specific. I think right now you'd have to fire, as I said before, about 5 layers of bureaucratic people. You'd probably have to bring in another agency. Maybe you want to bring in the ATF. There's an ATF guy who's been all over it, the question on television. Maybe that's a mistake, though. Maybe you want to bring in the DIA. Maybe you want to bring in the Customs. You want to bring in another agency, which is not the same thing, or maybe 2 more, right? You want to bring in a military one and a civilian one and have a 3-way security team so that all 3 can protect the president and each agency can watch what the guys from the other agency do. In other words, you would have to have somebody who has understood my theory of 9/11, someone who has read and mastered 9/11 synthetic terror made in USA, somebody who has understood my analysis of the Mutalab incident of Christmas Day back in 2009. Obama White House probing rogue network of moles behind Christmas Detroit Patsy fiasco, reports Richard Wolff on MSNBC. And then, unfortunately, State Department admits Detroit Christmas bomber was deliberately allowed to keep his U.S. entry visa and board the plane. That's February 10th, 2010, and it refers to testimony by Undersecretary of State Kennedy in the front of the House Homeland Security Committee in the House. And he said, State Department wanted to take away the visa for Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib of Nigeria, but another agency said, no, don't you dare, we're following him, and so forth. You pull on that. What's that other agency? That other agency was never named in public testimony that I know of, right? And it was Benny Thompson was the chairman. He was targeted, of course, heavily along with all black congressional committee chairs like Rangel and others. And this is the situation. So if you put the threats to Obama, not counteracted by the Secret Service, indeed fomented by the Secret Service. I would also, just a couple of other things that I know out of my own experience. The Secret Service hated Clinton. They hated Hillary. They may have had their reasons, but that's illegal. Sorry, can't do it. If you really don't like it, then you should quit. Okay? The Foster question, clear warning to Clinton from the secret government. Clinton's helicopter crashes, clear warning to the Clintons from the secret government. And as I recall, in the days right after the Clinton inauguration, there were wild reports of sexual orgies circulated by the Secret Service. So that place has got to be purged, broken into 1,000 pieces, as Kennedy said about the CIA. So bring in, a consortium of 2 or 3 other agents. The watchword, arrest McCain for ISIS. Arrest McCain for ISIS, and we'll see you next week on World Crisis Radio.